So yeah, hi everybody. This is a meeting of the working group Green Reviews and follows the CNCF Code of Conduct, which can be summarized with be nice to each other. Yeah, before we start with the agenda, would like to ask Vivek to introduce himself, as this is the first time here at Green Reviews. And what brings you here?
Hey, thank you for the warm welcome. My name is Vivek. I am a software engineer at VMware and Broadcom, because we were just acquired by Broadcom. And I'm just here because I'm very interested to delve deeper into the world of software sustainability. So, yep, that's on my end.
Great. What do you know about us already? Like from where we should start, so it can be a long stretch. I would like to make an introduction which can be quick, but long enough to you to get some context and to maybe help you follow along with the meeting, since we're not so many today. Still, we are in holiday August mode. Do you have maybe some questions specifically, or have you heard about what is the Green Review? Have you had the time to go around GitHub repo?
I do not. I just take a look at the description on the Google Calendar invite. But yeah,
Okay.
integrating sustainability into release life cycles. So I would assume it's just um, it's you'll be integrating uh, green reviews as part of your CI/CD pipelines. But that's my first guess. Is that correct?
Yeah, something along those lines, I would say. Here I've posted the GitHub repo we are working on, and on the GitHub repo there is that we also have an article when we explain in detail what we've done till last year KubeCon in Paris. And let me link you also the article, which can be useful. Here you go. Here we explain a bit more into detail, but maybe let me also share the screen and give you a quick overview. So wait a sec. Yeah, so I'm improvising from the article. So as you know, Green Reviews is one of the working group part of the TAG Environmental Sustainability together with the COM. And we have this vision of having a measure for the CNCF project around the sustainability footprint. So we have a clear, in our mind, there is a clear separation of responsibilities. So on the left side, you can see any CNCF project which can be interested into this green review. On the right side, that's us, what we manage. And our objective would be to have a GitHub action workflow that at very high level install a given CNCF project, produces some metrics, and then publishes this metrics into an infra as software. So here there is a more detailed version of what I just tried to highlight at a high level. So how this GitHub action will be deployed, one of the idea we can have something like a webhook for every release. We check, okay, is project tags has project tags in new release, and then when this happens, we trigger a GitHub action that starts a benchmark pipeline. And then here we had in this vision diagram, we have already the best use case in which we deploy dynamically the Agonix Kubernetes cluster. We're not there yet, but this is just a detail. And then in the Kubernetes cluster, we have our stack, which is composed of course, Prometheus and Grafana for observability, and then we have Kepler for producing the energy related metrics. and our node where we do our computation. So yeah, like these are some of the steps that the pipeline jobs do. Like I think, yeah, like those two have been done statically, and then now we're working on this like last 4. So like we are assuming that the cluster for now it's up and running 24/7. It's not the greenest of the option we know, but yeah, we'll get there. Like dynamically provisioning the hardware is like some extra complexity that we'll handle in the future as like we have more stable POC. And yeah, that's mainly it. I try to keep it into 5 minutes. Is it clear more or less what we would like to do?
Yes. So technically, to summarize, it's a GitHub Actions trigger, which triggers a GitOps pipeline, which then deploys an operator and a bunch of observability tools. I would assume a Helm chart uh, that basically does these green reviews on a cluster. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say at high level, you got the idea. Then there are a couple of details that we are discussing. So for example, now we're working into a setting in which the observability tools are already there in the cluster 24/7. And the action just, for example, deploys the project and then basically runs some benchmarks. So imagine you have a project X and you need some use cases along with the project X. So we run also those in the benchmark, and then we measure. So that's how we envision. Like this is currently what we are doing. And we are basically working in Q3, 4, or sorry, Q2, 3, on this. Like this is the main tracking issue. And what we call these 3 steps is like deploy. So it's the deployment of the CNCF project that we would like to review. Then we run the benchmarks, and then like we report those energy metrics. And we are at the step in which we're done with the deploy part of the GitHub action. We are currently finalizing the implementation of the issues for the run step, and then we just started the discussion on the report section. So this is more or less the state of the art. And yeah, like if you want to go down to the code details, maybe it's a bit premature, but we have something already here, right? Yeah, like we have a start of it.
Yeah, so those workflows are doing the deploy step. Falco is the first project we're working with to measure its footprint. And so the pipeline we have now deploys 3 different configurations of Falco and then cleans up at the end. And the next proposal, what we're going to start implementing is running the benchmarks for Falco. And so the pipeline is kind of under construction. But as we work through these proposals, we're then moving on and implementing.
Right. So quick question regarding that. When you say you're running benchmarks, are you reporting on carbon spend or like what are you trying to do here?
Yeah. So like when we say benchmark, we just like you can imagine some of the, for example, for the Falco project,
Yep.
it's basically a security tool, right? And it's tough to measure its impact without something running in the cluster. So we need, when we refer to benchmark, we refer to this additional workload that we place into the cluster, so that we can see something with with the project. And then here it's an example of what we like. This was our first report. So we have some energy produced by the Falco pod, and then here we statically computed like the emissions and embodied carbon to use the SCI specification.
I see. Carbon intensity.
Mm-hmm.
The AWS dashboard reports carbon spend as MCO2, megatons of CO2. So is that different from carbon intensity?
Megatons CO2.
I don't know if it's megatons, it just reports as MCO2.
Yeah, I think like we are reporting gram to CO2 equivalent. Yeah, MCO2, I guess it's no, I'm not sure what MCO2 is. Like I'm not an expert of the AWS uh, sustainability console. And I'm not sure how it would compare. But at the moment we are like there are multiple ways in which we could report the carbon intensity. We have decided for the moment to use this SCI, which reports to gram of CO2 equivalent.
That makes sense. The Green Software Foundation is like the only body that's working on this stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are different foundations, but yeah, like the Green Software Foundation has gained more traction, I would say, by now. One of the ones that's more traction.
This is exciting. Wow.
Yeah, we're still like step by step building everything. We did our first measurement for Falco. Already you can see, for example, that a lot of the carbon that was emitted or like that we have measured was mainly into the embodied carbon. This is something high level that we noticed. And yeah, something that we want to discuss more and more into the future, because basically it's nothing that CNCF maintainers can take care of. It's the hardware that we chose, like the embodied carbon. And but this was a rather manual, like we did these first measurements rather manually, and now like we have this focus of having this pipeline automated so that once we have a robust workflow, we can extend, hopefully, the same approach to other CNCF projects.
Okay. Pipeline automation. So this is part of is this part of a CI or the CD pipeline? Or both?
So
Or this is the post CD?
yeah, I would say maybe something like post CD, right? Like but it's something which is yeah, like after, like whenever you're done with the release, and then because like CI/CD is always with respect to your project, right? Like you want to deploy something to your project, but this is more for the CNCF project maintainers that have created or like published a new release and would like to get some sustainability metrics. I always use the generic term sustainability metrics because by now we have tied to the SCI, but we might change this in the future. So yeah, this is like a way to compare different CNCF projects from the sustainability point of view, and also have an history of, okay, like did this new release was this new release better in terms of sustainability, or like did we have some improvement or like something like this along these lines?
Oh, this is amazing. The new release, how are you able to measure the carbon footprint of a new release in such short time? Don't you have to have a release running in prod for a while until you get the metrics in order to be able to calculate the carbon spend?
That's a good question. Right now we have identified a runtime of 15 minutes, and
Okay.
within those 15 minutes, like we gather the energy metrics, and then we convert this into carbon metrics.
Okay, let's see.
And then we have never done a comparison between two releases yet. We are still like at this first automation phase with one release, but it's more like a vision for the future.
I see. This is a great start. And these energy metrics, you're getting these from Kepler?
Yes, correct. We're getting this from Kepler.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining. Hi, Mitch.
Hello.
And yeah, like after this first introduction into the Green Reviews working group, it's time to give some updates about the proposal 2. And yeah, like we have these tracking issues, and we already have 2 issues that are looking for someone that is looking or would like to get hands dirty. And I would give the floor to Ross, who can explain more about those 2 issues and how you can help us out.
Okay, great. So yeah, I'll just share my screen and share the proposals. So as we're kind of working through all the documentation we're creating is in that tooling repo, and so we've got the proposals we're working through. So the run proposal I'm just going to show because it has like a nice diagram which can help show where we are. Yeah, so here it is. Yeah. So what we have is in the first in the first proposal, the deploy step, we added the trigger here. So the pipeline can be triggered by calling the GitHub REST API, but we also have a cron job. And so I think it's at 10 a.m. or basically once a day, we trigger the pipeline, which also just helps us validate that everything is working correctly. And so yeah, we have this cron trigger, which is one of the GitHub action workflows. And then these areas in blue are the parts that have already been implemented. So we deploy the kind of correct configuration of Falco. And then at the end of the step, we delete the resources. So we're ready to do the next test. And so for proposal 2, we're adding the benchmarks. And so the benchmarks, like Antonio was saying, just having Falco deployed on its own won't really do anything because we need to be generating kernel events to kind of have a kind of more realistic workload for Falco. And so the Falco team have prepared 3 benchmarks that use, for example, StressNG, or they have their own Falco event generator. And so what proposal 2 with implementing it is adding a workflow that has these 3 steps. And then each one of these will be an individual job that will run. Let me just jump to the implementation issue. Yeah, so we've got 2 issues basically. The first issue is extending the pipeline to add this step. And so we have this project.json file that has our kind of metadata of which projects we're testing. And then the second part is packaging the Falco benchmarks into this workflow. So we'll just jump across to this repo here. So the Falco team, when we're kind of working with them, have created this repo where they're generating the manifests. So these are the kind of the tests that they've come up with. And obviously they have the domain knowledge about Falco to be able to kind of work on those tests. And so for example, the StressNG here is a deployment here that is then running StressNG within that deployment. And so for this step, we want to package these 3 manifests and add them to the pipeline. Yeah, so that's the kind of the second issue, and then the other issue is to extend the pipeline. So in here we have the projects.json, and so obviously Falco is the first project here. As we onboard more projects, we'll extend this, but for now we'll focus on getting the pipeline working well with Falco. And so what we'll be adding is a benchmarks workflow here to say which workflow should be executed. And then we're slowly kind of increasing the number of workflows we have. So this project trigger is the cron job that runs it once a day. And then here's the main pipeline. And so we're kind of packaging these tests up. So that's really the implementation of the run step, to have those work benchmarks that the Falcon team have generated and to get them integrated into the pipeline. That was a bit quick, really kind of rushing through that. Anyone got questions on that?
No, but what are the, so I believe Antonio was mentioning the issues to help out with respect to what you just covered. What would be the thing to help? How would we help?
Yes, definitely. So it's these two issues that have just been created quite recently that have got the help wanted label. And so with these as well, we have kind of more detail in the proposal about kind of the steps. But also kind of what's worked well for us in the past is the lead can also kind of pair with you if you want to work on one of the issues, if there's kind of questions to work on that. But yeah, if there's anyone that's still be interested in working in these issues, just let us know and we can assign you. Valeria was saying that she couldn't join the meeting today, but she'd like to take one of the issues. But we have like another one available. And hopefully, well, as we kind of work through proposals, we'll have kind of more issues created. Yes, so Mitch, if there's either of these that you would like to work on, or you've got kind of questions on them, we can cover these now, or also async in Slack as well, whichever you prefer, really.
Okay, async in Slack.
Yeah, great.
So there's a Slack.
Yes, so in the CNCF Slack, there's the main tag Slack channel, but there's also a channel for green reviews. Let me just find the channel name for that. Yeah, I'll just drop that in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so that's kind of the best if you've got kind of questions or where we kind of communicate about what we're working on is that channel, and it's kind of there's also the main tag channel as well.
Okay.
Yes, otherwise, if there's not kind of more questions on this, we can also move on to proposal 3, because that's the one that we're writing about.
Sure. I think the thing for me, I'm pretty sure we covered this last time, but my brain has been a bit all over the place. I have things set up. I documented a lot of that, and I wasn't really sure what to put in the proposal first and foremost, because if you put aside all of the setup, it's not much to propose. It's just like capture these metrics. So I wasn't really sure what to put in. I mostly record a lot of that setup for my own benefit because trying to get it to work locally required some tweaks. And then then it came to the actual capturing. I think Antonio discussed at some point keeping it simple. So I just, for some reason, had in my head Jason. I don't really know why, but that may or may not be the right option. And it really doesn't. I think the thing is with Prometheus data, I'm so used to looking at through Grafana when it comes to thinking like, oh, actually now where to put this. Apart from the company I used to work for, I wasn't really sure what to do with it in a very simple way. I was looking to see if it lets you kind of just dump it out as a file, and that's perfectly fine. But yeah, what did we want it as, I suppose, to make it useful as well?
Let me share the screen. Like I'll share the notes, and then we can because we started this discussion with Ross as well, and there are 3 main questions. Like, so the first question is like, how do we get the data, right? And like possible answers are like we scrape directly.
Yeah, I was looking at that too, and it seemed like, I don't know, Prometheus didn't really want you to do that, but but yeah.
Another option could be like we could read Prometheus, or I don't know, like I think those are the two main options. Like for like I would prefer to scrape directly the Kepler exporter so that we don't have to we don't have a dependency to Prometheus, and we go direct.
But are those two SRE metrics Kepler metrics? I don't think they are they?
So okay, so this is an additional question. So what kind of data? This is actually the first question. What kind of data we want?
That's 3, yeah.
So it's like we said, some SRE metrics and some energy metrics.
Mm.
And then we have, okay, how do we get this data? And then we have, I think, where do we store this data? And how?
Wow.
And yeah, like how do we get the data? I think like we discussed different approaches. We were thinking about like something like a job, Kubernetes job that has some bash job with bash commands. Maybe as simple as doing a curl to the Kepler exporter.
Okay.
Or for this, like for the energy metrics. And for the Kepler, so I think we have the Kubernetes metrics server, right?
Yeah.
For the energy / SRE metrics. So this is like simple practical idea. So yeah.
May I offer an idea?
Yeah, sure. That's why we are here for.
Awesome. So with respect to scraping, I mean, there's, you want to capture multiple samples, so you're not going to just want to scrape once. You want to sample it much like Prometheus does. Another option would be, so the idea would be to use OpenTelemetry, the OTel collector, which has functionality for conversions and outputs to multiple places. So you could use it as sort of it's not as simple as a bash script, so I recognize that. But it does have lots and lots of adapters for different kinds of output, whether it be to a file, which would be very simple, or to a Kafka topic, or to Prometheus if you ever wanted to do that, or to all the above, in fact.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Yeah.
Can you provide a link to the hotel collector GitHub so that I can put it in the notes, and yeah, we can let the folks take a look. I also have not a lot of experience with the OpenTelemetry tool, so it's good that you suggested it.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the actual. Give me a moment here. Let me give you the project, the GitHub project name. It's what you'd expect it to be. Yeah. So here in Zoom is that, and then from that, there's just the general the website that has it. Yeah. Those two pieces. I'm I don't work on this project, but where I work, we use this quite a bit. We're using it quite a bit, quite extensively. It is the project itself is more than just the collector. So the OpenTelemetry project itself is a protocol, tooling for instrumentation for programs that run. It's they're even considering other protocols for command and control for a fleet of collectors. But the thing I'm suggesting for this particular part of it is the actual collector itself, which is downloadable as a single binary, and it has the one that you can get from the GitHub site, I believe, has essentially all the adapters in it. So it's sort of a fully baked or full-fledged Swiss Army knife, if you understand what I'm talking about there, of just all the possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you mentioned it. Actually, I did write about it when I was working at a hotel compatible company and kind of forgot about it for some reason.
Yeah. I would say it's become the de facto standard in my world, at least, for basically observability. So all the big observability vendors have been contributing to it.
Awesome. That's actually really helpful. I don't know how I completely forgot about it, but perfect. Yeah.
And now all this work at a high level. So like this binary, you can provide an endpoint to scrape and some, I don't know, interval and what kind of metrics you're interested to, and then it handles the basically the scraping and the output to a file in the binary. Or
That's a good description. Yes, I would say so.
okay.
There's an internal abstraction within the OpenTelemetry collector itself called a pipeline that has, I'll just infect you with some of these abstractions you might not care, but it has this concept of a receiver, which is a thing that actually is doing the collection or the scraping in this case. There's filters that you can put in the middle, and then the output are these things called exporters, and you can create combinations of receivers and filters and exporters to do fan outs and filtering and do yeah, you can get quite sophisticated with it, but what you described was a very good summary.
Ross, what do you say? Do you have experience with OpenTelemetry? What was your idea about it?
Yes, I'm afraid no, I don't have a lot of experience with OpenTelemetry, but I think it's it's a good approach, definitely one for it to investigate, because if there is a single kind of endpoint that we can fetch and then we can store the metrics, kind of having a high level tool to not have to have too much complex kind of bash scripting would be good. I think it's just that overall we want to try and keep what we're doing quite lightweight. But for example, maybe if there's a Helm chart we could deploy into the cluster with a configuration, then if OpenTelemetry can help us do a lot of the heavy lifting, and I think that'd be really good.
Question, Mitch, though, remind me, if we use OpenTelemetry, do we still need Prometheus?
No, you don't have to have Prometheus.
So that would kind of replace a fairly complex dependency with a simpler one, because you'd also then lose Grafana, which is probably fairly heavy in itself. So
yeah,
I mean,
it's an I mean, the OpenTelemetry collector itself, you could think of it as an adapter. So if you wanted to add Prometheus later or any other kind of storage output and add basically an exporter to that type, you can do that. But I think this, for really simple purposes, we could just use the file output. Now, I mean, it sounds like this team wants to avoid using Prometheus, but at some point when you will want to do some kind of analytics to these metrics, even the simplest things like aggregated sums, min, max, P95, percentiles and so on, you're probably going to want some kind of database thing that has functions to be able to do time series operations on the data. Now that might be someone else's problem, which is fine if that's how you want to scope things. But if you sort of think downstream of like, well, what are we going to do with the data and how do we want to report on it? At some point, somebody's going to have to think about how to use the output of this OpenTelemetry collector thing, if in fact that's the way you go, or the scraping of Kepler. And I know that the last meeting I attended, there was, I think, some questions by you, Chris, was like, what am I doing with this data and how do I report on it? And where, who's going to use that? And the tooling underneath, it will be, to some degree, have to be thought out in terms of like the consumer, the end consumer. But again, I don't want to try and change the scope of this because I'm just really an observer at this point.
No, it's really a good contribution. We have different options, and like for every proposal, we always list down what we have considered and why, and like all the other options that we have talked about and why we have discarded. Because like anything is or better, nothing is fixed in stone. And at some point, we might realize that some of the decisions that we took along the road were not correct. And then yeah, it's good to keep track of every decision that we make. So yeah, thanks for bringing open telemetry to the table.
You're welcome.
And then I think the next important question is where do we actually store the data? So here also we had interesting options. Now, Ross, you have to help me out if I forgot some of the option that we brainstormed the other day. So one option was to, for example, something as simple as a file in a Git branch. So like having basically just a fake branch for publishing results, and then like some kind of structure. It will not scale well, but it doesn't give us like an heavy dependency of some kind of storage solution, and it's like good enough and visible for the first. So like this is like the option that, for example, the Kepler folks have chosen. So like something like a Git branch that is only dedicated for file publishing. It's not the best practice for sure, but could be a practical solution. Another way could be to consider some kind of database to use. But then like this like brings the question, okay, which database and why? And then like everything, of course, would be saved in the disk of the Equinix server that we're using. So it brings also to the table, like how do we handle the backup of the disk of the Equinix server disk.
Yes, so for example, we have Prometheus running in the cluster, but we would need an external backup for that. Yeah, Antonio, we were talking about possibly using S3 or S3 compatible storage. And so we do have an S3 bucket from CNCF already, and we use that for the OpenTofu state file that we use to manage the cluster. Potentially, we could also add the metrics to the S3 bucket, but we'd still have the question of what to query it. Mitchell, so I think your question was about how we want to expose that data is a really good one. And I wanted to go back to something that we had kind of when we started the work with the working group, which is we wanted to have the metrics published into the CNCF DevStats site. So yeah, let me just looking for DevStats. So as I understand it with DevStats, that they have kind of various Grafana dashboards. And we were thinking that might be a way to expose sustainability metrics for CNCF projects. So in that case, maybe having our own Prometheus helps to be able to connect to that. But we wanted to do kind of the research part into kind of DevStats, how we would get data in there, but it's not something I've got kind of experience of so far. So if anyone's got the experience with DevStats, that would be really helpful input.
Is that maybe a proposal 3, take 2?
Yeah, yes, yeah,
yeah.
we're moving kind of step by step. So it's probably proposal 5 or 6, but it's just to have that kind of end goal inside.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Something that we have decided to take out of the scope for this for this round of proposals, simply because we wanted to focus on the automation of this and not necessarily something external, which is okay. Like we have the data already, we publish into somewhere else. So and it would be probably something at the end of this quarters. Like we will discuss, okay, what are the next steps, and some ideas for the next steps involve CNCF DevStats.
Then I think this answers my other question around the actual proposal itself. It gives me an idea of what to put in. I will still say I don't think it needs to be very long. There's a lot of boilerplate in those proposals that I don't really feel is necessary to fill in this particular case anyway, because a lot of it's covered in the previous ones. Yeah, that was kind of where I got very lost. It's like there was just a lot of stuff where I was like, do I really need to put something here? But that
Yeah, I
helps
think
if the end, now I kind of know the end goal and the non-goals and things like that. That's a little bit more helpful. And the 50-minute window, I guess, is also the same thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
for the moment, yes. And then we can decide to change it. And then like if you need help on to see like, for example, examples of the other proposal, what we put in the other section and how I think
Yeah, I
like
looked at that. Yeah.
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 For example, I like the goals and non-goals, as you said, and also the user stories help a bit for maybe folks that don't have a lot of context to
Yeah.
see what's there. And then yeah, the design details, of course. It's where we I would give sections of where we can summarize like these 4 questions, and then like in the design details try to answer the question
Okay.
like discussed for this proposal.
Yeah.
So they really wanted to give some kind of structure for these proposals and see okay if this kind of like if this can help orienting the proposal draft in some way.
Yeah, no, I did look at it. I think I just got to a point where, yeah, I think this has helped. Okay, cool.
Great. Yeah, then I think that's all for proposal 3. Yeah, that's all for proposal 3. And then I think our last point in the agenda was yeah, so like we have one action item before that like Mitch, you're gonna catch up with, I think, with Ross about one of action issue, right? Like going a bit back in the discussion.
Yeah.
Just with Ross for an action issue. Yeah, Chris, you going to edit the proposal and then we can pair up on this. Antonio, and then yeah, and then we have our last point is like this little PR that I did for the README, just nothing complex. It was just I added some information regarding the project, image about the workflow visions, and I updated the roadmap a little bit. Yeah, I saw that Ross already committed some suggestions. I didn't have the time to look at it, but yeah, it looks like those are all, yeah, this is fine, benchmark test cases. And then like here, I wanted to ask you, I think we should remove these 2 points as a classic problem with open topic, but the pipeline is separate for the measurement pipeline. Yeah, so because like here I wanted to keep this only because I thought in the vision at some point probably we'll do it, right? Like dynamic provision of the infrastructure. But maybe we can have a suggestion about, I don't know, those 2 points we'll take care later in the stage. And then yeah, like feel free to read the other changes that I did to the README. And also if you're like, if you joined lately and you felt like something was missing that like you jumped, for example, this is like in particular to you, Vivek, since you're first like newcomer to the GitHub. If you feel like some informations are missing or like you would like some questions to be answered, and yeah, feel free to comment here. Okay, this was missing in the README, please add, and we'll catch up there.
Sure, absolutely.
And yeah, that would be it for me. I don't know if you would like to discuss anything else. We have some time. Otherwise, we could also close earlier.
I wanted to go back to the S3 part of the comment that you had, just
Sure.
very, very briefly. Yeah. There are other tools that let you use S3 without being dependent on Amazon. And 2 examples that are processes you can run locally to provide the S3 API, which is Mini.io. And there's also another Java-related process called Ozone or project called Ozone. that provide S3 functionality. If so, you're not necessarily tied to AWS, although that might be the best way to go if CNCF has an AWS bucket for you to use. So that's important, I think, from the perspective of development tooling. If you don't want to have to somehow come up with some S3 bucket to put data in while you're developing, those two options are there for you.
Yeah.
So thanks so much. That's great, because we have talked about Minio in the past. I think also Equinix has some Minio support as well. But Ozone is a new one on me, so yeah, we'll look at that one as well.
Yeah.
And that's what we're thinking is, with it being kind of, we can use something S3 compatible to not be tied into Amazon on that.
Ozone's an Apache project. MiniIO is owned by a company, so there's some licensing things that might trip you up with MiniIO, perhaps. They've been less friendly.
I have interviewed them a couple of times as well for my podcast, so I could potentially wrangle some kind of if we need something.
Yeah.
Not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to know. Yeah.
And this is like what I think what we need to carefully consider, because like for me, either we go into a quick win solution, like something as ugly as filing a Git branch, and then we just go on, or we commit to some kind of solution, and then we need to balance the effort with the pro and cons that we get. So this is where actually, if there are some experts around, I don't know if this is already data engineering, or collecting solution that can scale well, and what works well in this kind of environment within Kubernetes and so on. This is where we would need some input. So if you have folks would like to bring into the next discussion as we proceed with the draft of the proposal, this is very appreciated. Because I mean, in the end, we're gonna make some decision that will have for sure some pros and cons. And it's better to be opinionated. And yeah, that's it. Any other question?
Not for me.
Oh, sorry.
I was saying not for me.
Okay. Yeah, then I wish you a good rest of the day. Thanks for joining. It was a very interesting session, and see you in 2 weeks.
Cheers.
Is everything?